welcome back, kids. I am back, and we are here doing Chapter 31, The Cold War. All right, let's move through it. Okay, how how do World War II end? Boy, Mr. Doyle, you are slipping up with your grammar here. How did World War II end? Okay, how did it end? Right. Um, Remember when we left off? Germany now is occupied by the West. In particular, it is occupied by Great Britain on the western side and the United States on the western side. And on the eastern side of there, it's occupied by Russia. That was the agreement after World War II, is that they would split Germany and Russia would be able to control one half. And one thing that should be known is that the tensions between the United States and the USSR, the Soviet Union, were at an all-time high. Okay, so who are the superpowers in the world? Well, those are the two people I just mentioned, right? That is the United States and that is the Soviet Union. Okay, and at this point, a superpower, I have that in bold as a vocab word. A superpower is a very large country that is really the top of the food chain, if you will, of countries in the world, right? And at this point, there were only two, right? There was no one in the same stratosphere as the United States and as the Soviet Union, right? They were both the top dogs for throughout the world. Okay. So some of the issues in Europe, right? We went over that Germany is split at this point, right? The East is controlled by the Soviet Union, and the West is democratic now, and that's where they're occupied by the United States and by Great Britain, but they're given more of a democratic status. Okay. At this point, the USSR, the Soviet Union, wants to expand its borders, right? And remember from last chapter, right? President Harry Truman wanted to contain communism. So containment was one of his philosophies that he practiced during this time period. Okay, the idea of containing communism was very important because the Soviet Union, they wanted to spread communism, right? They thought that their success was based off of how many countries they could also get to become communist. All right, so the USSR wished to expand its borders and influence to ensure its security and pave the way for worldwide domination. And that's what they wanted to do. They wanted a world where everyone was communist, right? They wanted to spread communism throughout the world, right? And they would be the top superpower. Okay, America's peacetime goals reflected America's ideals and served American interest. Okay, so both are on each side, right? The Soviet Union is looking to spread communism throughout the world. The United States is going to make it seem like they're looking to spread democracy, but what are we really concerned with? The prevention of communism, right? So it's not even necessarily to spread democracy as it is to prevent communism from spreading. So that's really where we are right now at the beginning of the Cold War. All right, Eastern Europe. Okay, Berlin city. The Berlin Wall divides the city of Berlin in two. Okay, that's where Germany is kind of divided, right out along Berlin. Eastern European countries begin to resist, and we haven't really gotten to speak about this. Early on, we talked about how many poor countries would. You could see them going towards communism, right? You could see them being enticed by converting to communism. But at this point, after World War II, they see really a lot of the negatives of communism, right? Because remember now, after Stalin has taken power, he was implementing his 5-year plans, okay? And they saw really how communism was taking place in Russia, and many of the Eastern European countries begin to arrest, right? Czechoslovakia, people are protesting, and anyone who was protesting was arrested. Some were killed. Protests will even happen in Poland. and things will get many of the people try to escape, right? And this is why we call this area the Iron Curtain, right? Eastern Europe will slowly become the Iron Curtain, where we, as the West, United States, Great Britain, France, Spain, all of our usual Western countries, we have no idea what's happening over in Eastern Europe, okay? There is very little movement out of Eastern Europe and into Eastern Europe. Okay, very few people are leaving the country. Very few people are allowed to leave the country. Okay, so few people are leaving the country, and very few people are coming into the country. Okay, and countries it should be, right. They'll all be part of the Soviet Union, but they are separate countries, right? Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Bulgaria, Romania, all these countries will be part of the Soviet Union at this point, but they will be like the satellite states. Okay, we'll kind of get to that in a moment. Okay, so this is a brief timeline, all right? Obviously, we're going from 1949 to 79, so there's a lot of different things going on here, but I just wanted to give you an overall view, right? So 1949, sorry about that. The Soviet Union, they finally develop nuclear weapons, okay? The USA already had nuclear weapons, right? We know this because of the dropping of the bomb in World War II. 1953, both countries have hydrogen bombs. Okay, and now obviously there is more technological improvements now. Okay, so they have the hydrogen bombs. Both countries are essentially working against each other to ensure their own domination, right? The U.S. is working against the Soviet Union to ensure the United States' domination, and vice versa for the Soviet Union. Okay, by 53, you can obviously tell things are going to heat up. Things heat up so much, but luckily by 1969, and we'll get over what kind of happens during that time, why the tensions heat up, and we'll get to one of those issues today. They will have a series of meetings to denuclearize in 1969, and that is what we call the SALT talks. Okay, the SALT talks are used to really to bring the threat level down. Okay, 1979 agreement sets limits on nuclear weapons. Right now you are not only did they denuclearize or demilitarize or break them down, but now we set a limit on how many weapons you could have. Okay, and also agree to limit anti-ballistic missiles. Okay, that's another important thing. The anti-ballistic missiles are the ones that are like used to take out other missiles. Okay, larger missiles. Nuclear weapons will spread. By the late 1960s, this was the issue here. It was the spreading of nuclear weapons and the spreading of communism, right? So we're concerned for that. By the late 1960s, Britain and France and China all have nuclear weapons. Okay, and they're nuclearizing. They do not want to be left behind. Though the United States has nuclear weapons, so does the Soviet Union. They need to be protected, right? That's in the cases of Britain and France. And China is looking to have protection, as they will be communist, right? Whereas we know that they're going to kind of align themselves with Russia and become communist. Many world leaders looked to oppose this, and then finally in 1968, many nations signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is, again, important because now we are agreeing that there will be no more nuclear weapons being created. Okay, building up of alliances. Soviets will help China and Korea. Will Korea, you wonder? Korea is one at this point, but they will divide, and we'll get to the Korean War later in this chapter as well, right? U.S. will try to counteract the Soviets, right? Soviets create the Warsaw Pact. The U.S. creates NATO and CETO. CETO is for the Southeast Asia to really try to help out those southeastern countries in Asia from them going communist, right? Some of the members of NATO and CETO are listed there: US, UK, France, Australia, Pakistan, Thailand, New Zealand, Philippines. And the U.S. will align themselves with South Korea and Japan as well. And like I said, the Korea will basically split, and North Korea will be backed by the communists. Okay, the final thing is the Bay of Pigs invasion. For the final thing for today, Bay of Pigs invasion, 1950s. Fidel Castro and rebels fight against their corrupt dictator. 1959, the rebels win and Castro rises to power. There will be a Cuban revolution throughout Cuba. Fidel Castro will ask the Soviet Union for help, and like we said, the Soviet Union is very willing to help because anything that would preserve communism is something that the Soviet Union would back and they would understand. Castro calls for USSR's help. Well, I just read that. John Kennedy in the U.S. will try to topple Castro. Okay, this is called the Bay of Pigs invasion. The U.S. trains Cuban soldiers, puts them against Castro and his men. This mission is a huge failure. Okay, this will escalate tensions very, very high during this time period. And that's why I'm going to leave off here, okay? So later today, be on the lookout. There will be a Flipgrid, and it will be a newscast starring yours truly, the newscast extraordinaire. All right, and now I'm going to kind of ask you guys kind of respond to that. So, bear with me in my acting, but I think it's going to be brilliant. Okay, so I'll give you the story, the inside scoop on the Bay of Pigs. All right, peace out. Social distance, kids. Wash your hands. And, Jordan documentary. Fire.